Welcome back to our second tutorial of programming Windows Forms application. In this second lesson, we're going to try and see how we can write code to create a particular application or to design a particular Windows Form application. So in the previous lesson, we saw how to create a blank Windows form, okay, such that if we run the program, we see a running application, but it's completely blank. There's nothing going on within the form. So I'll just go ahead and launch Visual Studio. I'm going to open the previous solution that we created, the basic Windows Forms application solution. So I've clicked on it and it has loaded the previous solution we created. So here I said if we run this program, we see that it is a blank form. Okay, so there's nothing in here, there's nothing going on. I'll just go ahead and close that and terminate the program. So remember, whenever you want to write code or you want to change your program, always make sure you terminate. If you run the application, make sure you stop the application from running before you type your code or make changes to your solution. Okay, so I think I've shown you how to open the form1.cs code. Okay, so here we've already opened it. We can just switch to the tab, but assuming it's not yet open, suppose you have something like this showing, you can just come to your form1.cs here on in your solution explorer. Make sure you expand to see your project, and inside your project you will see the form1.cs, which has this kind of a sign of a dialog box. So you just double click on that form1.cs. okay, so if you double click on it, the design view, so this is the design view, what you see here is the design view for your application. And because inside the form right here, it is completely empty, right? That's in the design view. You have not added any control inside here. Okay, that's why when we run the application, we see an empty blank form. Okay, now some of the things you can do is for this form, you can actually start designing by adding in what we call components or controls. Okay, so let's just open Notepad and type that. Controls. Okay, so they are called controls. Actually, they are actually objects. Okay, if you remember our C# beginner tutorial, that's the previous series we covered. Controls are actually just objects. Okay, they are objects of an already pre-existing class. Okay, so the class for each control has already been created. They come bundled with .NET. Okay, so when you try to add a control into, let's just close that. When you try to add a control into your form that's in the design view, what you're actually doing is you're actually creating an object of that class. Okay, however, because you're doing it within the design view, the code to create that object is actually going to be written for you automatically by Visual Studio. Okay, so that's something very convenient about designing or programming Windows Forms applications. Okay, because it has this visual element where you can actually, not everything you do you have to do with code, with writing code. You could actually perform some things by visually dragging and dropping controls within your design view. Okay, we're going to see an example of what I'm saying now. So remember what I said about the toolbox. Notice we have a toolbox here. If you remember the previous time we clicked on this toolbox, there was nothing inside here. Okay, As you can see right now, there are controls in here. You can see they are grouped. There's all Windows forms. If you click on this triangle, you'll see all the controls available for Windows forms. Okay, all of them. Okay, and if you minimize that, you can see there are common controls. Now these are just like filters. Okay, so for example, this pointer is a common control. Okay, if you check under all Windows forms, you'll see that you still have the pointer there. Okay, they are the same. It's the same pointer. It's just that these are actually filters. So not all common controls. Not all. There are some controls that are categorized as containers controls. Okay, so those controls you will only see within containers. Okay. Okay. Okay, not okay, they're not actually filters per se. That's okay, they are filters, but in a way you can see what I mean is there are some subsets. There are some items that are still within containers that are also considered common control. So for example, like this pointer, you can see it's considered as a common control, and it's also considered as a control that is used within containers. Okay, so you can see it here. Okay, but not all of them. For example, you can see link label is a common control, but it's not considered as a container. Okay, now to avoid all this, I think the best thing you can always do is just use your all Windows form. So all the controls, whether they irrespective of where they fall into, which category they fall into, you will find them under this all Windows forms controls. Okay, so any control you're looking for, just come in here and you'll see it. Okay, good. By the way, I was saying the reason why we're seeing these controls now is because we are in the design view. Okay, notice if I right click this and go to code view, if I go to view code, now we are no longer in the design view. That is why if we go to toolbox now, you can see there are no controls any longer. Okay, because we are no longer in the design view. This is the code view. Okay, this is where you write your code. When you open this form1.cs, you are expected to write code. But when you highlight this form1.cs design in square bracket, that's the design view. The moment you activate this window, you notice that when you go to toolbox, you now have your controls available. Okay, so if you go to toolbox and you don't see your controls, always make sure you are in the design view. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add what we're going to do is we're going to design this Windows form. We're going to just add a single button. Okay, we're going to add a button. Now remember what a button is. A button is something you can click. Okay, so like I said, these controls are mostly objects. Okay, they are objects of an already existing class that is bundled together in .NET. So you don't have to worry about actually writing the code that creates the button. Okay, it's already written. All you need to do is just drag the button. If you come down in here inside the controls, you'll see there's a button control here. It's after pointer, background worker, binding navigator, binding source, and the next is button. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and hold this control. I've clicked and I've held, and I'm dragging it onto the form. Okay, that's in the design view. Notice I can decide wherever I want to drop it. Okay, so I'm going to drop it somewhere in the center of the Windows forms. Okay, of the Windows form. So I've released my mouse button and it has dropped the button. Now, notice that the form is no longer highlighted. Okay, the form is no longer highlighted. The button, however, is now highlighted, meaning you have selected this object. Okay, now that is something you need to understand. Every control that you see that you drag and drop in here is actually an object. Okay, so for example, this is an object of the button class. Okay, you like I said, the button class comes with the .NET with .NET, bundled with .NET. So I'm not even sure you have access to the code. Okay, I don't think you have access to the code. What you do have access is you can use the class to create your objects. Okay, but the actual source code that creates these objects, they are they're in .NET, and I doubt if you have access to the actual source code. Okay, but it doesn't really matter whether you do have access to it or not. The good thing is you can actually use those classes to create your button objects or other types of control objects. Okay, good. Now, to further give a little more explanation, is that even the form is actually an object. Okay, even the form is actually an object. That's this particular form. This particular form is an object of the form1 class. If you remember the form1 class, this if you enlarge this, you should see form1, see it here. Okay, this is the class. This is a form1 class. Remember, it's a partial class. It's partially defined in here, form1.designer.cs, and the remaining part of the form1 class is in here. And by the way, let's just open the form1.cs and have a look and have a peek. That's this one. Sorry, not that one. That's this one. We're going to choose view code. Okay, so we go here and we right click and choose view code. Okay, that's this one. Now notice what it is. It is actually an extension of the form class. Now, did you write any form class? No, you didn't. It also comes with .NET. Okay, most of the things that you do when you create Windows Forms applications, you will notice that most of the things you do, you're just extending an already existing code base. Okay, so there's already a lot of code written within .NET which you use, or a lot of classes written within .NET which you use or you extend to create or to alter to create the kind of things you want to create. Okay, so they give you a kind of starting point, so you don't have to start all from scratch. Okay, good. That's just what I wanted. I'm sure you must have you can remember this syntax in our previous series when we did beginner C# tutorial. Remember, form1, this is extends. Usually if this was an interface, then this would mean implements, if you remember. Okay, so but because this is a class, form is a class, it means form1 extends form. Okay, so everything that a form class has, a form1 class is also going to have. Now that is why I just brought you here to show you that this extends this, and that is why you will see that our form, so I'm just going to close this, bring us back to the design view. That is why you notice that our form actually has some properties, even though we did not specify, or we didn't write it in the form1.cs. Okay, because the form class, which is in .NET, already has those properties. This form1 object, this particular form object, inherits those properties. Okay, now what are those properties? Now if you click on this form, you can see the form is already highlighted. If you come down to the properties window, remember the properties window, this is the properties window, you will see some items. Okay, and the way the items are written is they are written in two kind of sections. Okay, so you have a left, something on the left, and then a value on the right, something on the left, a value on the right, something on the left, a value on the right. Sometimes the value on the right is empty, don't worry. Now, these things on the left that you see that are listed are actually properties of this your selected object. Okay, notice that I selected this form 1 object, that's this particular object. Okay, this particular form object, if you look in your properties window, everything you see on the left, that's, remember I said it's left right, that's application settings is written on the left, and then the value of application settings is what you see on the right. At the moment it's empty. Data bindings at the moment is empty on the right. Also notice that those properties on the left that have a plus, a little plus symbol, means you can actually expand them, meaning they have some sub properties embedded in there. So for example, like this data bindings, if I click on the plus, you notice that it expands and we have something like advanced, tag, text, name, accept button. They are all under the data bindings property. Okay, if I minimize that, you will see that it closes back. Okay, okay, the name is not the things that are under the data bindings, I believe, are the advanced, tag, and text. Okay, and you can see the name is another property. You can see on the right the value for that is form 1. Okay, the accept button property, this is the value, this is the value, this is the value. Okay, so these are the properties and these are the values corresponding to those properties on the left. Okay, if you remember our objects in C Sharp, when we were learning C Sharp, you remember that an object can have a property, and that property can have a value. Okay, and the value of that property is going to have the data type of whatever you declare that property to be. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Now that's exactly what's happening here. This form is an object, okay, and it has properties. This name is a property, accept button is a property, accessible the description is a property, accessible name is a property, and these, remember variables. I said variables are like boxes where you can store things. Now these are the values or the items that are stored inside those properties here. Okay, and the thing you should know is that in Visual Studio, without actually going into code, you can actually change the values of these properties. Okay, so for example, let's take this okay, not name, we're not going to change the name. Instead, let's look for text property. Okay, so I'm just scrolling down, I'm going to look for text property, that's this one. This text property is actually the property that holds or that controls, that holds the value of the string that is written up here, okay, on the form. That's the title of the form, this form 1. You can see on the right hand side, the value is saying that the value of that property is form 1. Okay, now if I decide to change this value from form 1 to let's call it my, notice I'm giving it a space, doesn't matter, because this is expecting a string. Okay, and also another thing you should know is, remember in our code when we're writing string, we usually delimit them with double quotes. Okay, but in Visual Studio or in Visual C Sharp, when you're entering the value in here for this text property, you do not use the quotation marks, okay, the double quotes. You do not embed them, you do not delimit them with double quotes. So I'm going to call it my basic Windows app, and notice what happens the moment I tap enter key on my keyboard. Notice that this this form 1 text that was showing here immediately changes to my basic Windows app. Okay, so I have changed that particular property of this form object. Okay, I don't know if if that makes sense to you. Also, another thing you should notice is, you see this this little box, you can see you can actually use it to resize the default size of the of the form. So I'm going to click on this and drag it and just minimize it a bit. And notice what happens. Did you notice this size property? Did you notice that the width has changed to 667? Okay, if you haven't noticed it, keep your eye on this size and these values here. Notice what's going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and enlarge. The moment I release the mouse button, notice that it changes to 916. Okay, that is because the moment whatever change I make here, it gets updated here. Okay, automatically gets updated. Okay, also we can do it the other way around. I can change, so I can choose say 500 here, and the moment I tap enter, you notice that it reduces it to the width of 500. Okay, so I'm just going to go back here and change it to 600 or 640, actually 640, and you can see it enlarges back. Now all I'm showing you is that you see this is actually an object, and you can play around with its properties within the properties window. Okay, so there are so many, as you can see, there are so many properties only for this form alone. All these are properties of this form that you can change. Even the color of the background, that's the color, this little white color of the background of the form, is you can actually change it. In fact, let's try and do that. We should I think we can probably find it under let me see, let's look for color. Okay, for color, if we go to for color, okay, that's I don't think that's the one. Let's keep searching. I'm pretty sure it should be somewhere. Background image layout, back color, exactly. So under this back color property, notice what is selected at the moment. A white is selected. Notice we can change it. Actually, a control is selected. This control has a meaning. It usually means whatever whatever color controls usually use in my Windows forms, in my normal Windows system. Okay, that's why this is selected under system and under control. Notice that I can come to custom and choose whatever color I want. So let's change it to orange. Okay, notice that the background color has changed to orange. Okay, by the way, let's go ahead and run this program and see what it looks like. Notice I've added a button and I've changed the property, the text property of the form, and I've also changed the background color. Okay, this is just to show you some of the things you can do by altering the properties. Okay, I'll go ahead and click on play, and you notice that is what we get. So we get this window that can be enlarged. You can see the background is orange. You can minimize, you can set it back, you can minimize it to bottom, you can bring it back, you can enlarge. Notice the button is there, and you can actually click this button. The only thing is that we did not ask the computer to carry out any operation if this button is clicked. Okay, that is another thing you should know. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop this. When you create Windows Forms applications, okay, when you create buttons like this, or when you create controls, they usually come as dumb as you can think of. Okay, it's just a button. Okay, you have not set up what actually happens when the user clicks on that button. Okay, that is why if we run this program and we click that button, nothing actually happens. Okay, just to end this, before I end this program, at least we've seen before I end this this episode of the series, I'm going to explain another thing. Apart from the properties here, there are actually what we call events. So in here, under the properties window, Notice these icons, okay? These icons actually have meanings. At the moment this is selected, this particular property, if you highlight it, you'll see it says properties, okay? This one is just for arranging whatever is inside here in alphabetical order, whether from A to Z or from Z to A, okay? So if I click it one more time, it's going to change the order, I believe. Okay, it's not changing the order. I thought you could change from ascending to descending, but it doesn't actually do that. So I think, let's see, what's this? Categorized. Oh, okay, this to categorize it, this to arrange it alphabetically. Okay, so it can only go from A to Z. It cannot go from Z to A. So you use this to arrange them alphabetically. That's the properties, based on the name of the properties. And that's when properties are selected. Notice this little thunder on your right. If you highlight it, it says events. Now, events, we haven't really covered events when we did beginner C# tutorials. There's a reason I didn't want to get you confused. Events are actually like delegates. We didn't treat delegates, so that's why I just skipped events. But you will see, to use events is actually very easy and straightforward. I think we're going to try and use an event today in this lesson, just to show you what an event is. So an event is just like what it says. It's like an event, okay? When something occurs, okay, that's an event. An event actually allows you to write code, okay? Keep that in mind. An event in Windows Forms application allows you to write code that gets executed when a particular thing occurs, okay? When a particular event occurs. So, for example, you see this button. If I click this button, that is a particular event, like an event has occurred, okay? So if that button click event occurs, you usually expect something to happen, okay? In a program, you expect something to happen. However, the computer is so dumb, it wouldn't just do, like, what will it do if this button gets clicked? It doesn't know what to do, okay? You have to write the code that executes, or you have to write the code that tells it what to do when this button gets clicked, okay? So that's an example of an event. So if you click on this little thunder, you'll see all the events of, well, let's start, before we go on to the button, let's start with the form, okay? So apart from the button, the form itself has some events. So if we click on that thunder, you can see there are some listed items, and all these listed items are actually events, okay? They are events, and you can see on the right hand side, there are also like properties. On the left, you see the name of the event, and on the right, you see the value of the event. The value of the event is usually a method, okay? The method is usually contains the code that is to be executed when that particular event occurs. I know I'm all being so theoretical, so we should probably take a test and just take a sample event, create a sample event, and see what it looks like, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to create an event for this button, okay? We're going to create an event for this button, and the event we're going to create is when the button gets clicked, okay? When the button gets clicked, we want something to happen, okay? We want the color, probably, let's just okay, rather than the color, let's change this text, okay? Let's change this text to something else, okay? So let's do that and see what happens. So to do that, first we're going to select the button. Remember, we dropped this button from toolbox. So we select the button. I've highlighted the button, meaning now that if we look in the properties window, whatever we see in that properties window, there are properties of this button. But because event is the event tab is selected, what we're seeing are not actually properties. What we're seeing are actually events for this button. And the particular event we're looking for is the click event, okay? And that's this one. Notice to actually create an event for this click, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click inside here. That's on the right hand side of the click event. Remember, the click is the event on the left. On the right hand side, I'm going to double click, and the moment I double click, it brings me inside this form1.cs. And notice what happens. It has added this code for us. Okay, by the way, this is not the only code that has been added. If you look into your designer form1.designer.cs, if you look in here, if you're very vigilant, you will notice that some code has been actually added, and everything from here to here was actually just added after I added those after I added that button, and also after I created the event. Okay, this probably these were added after I added the button, and this was added after I added the event. Okay, so I remember I told you you should not worry too much about what's going on in the form1.designer.cs, because I said you should not tamper with it. I just wanted to show you that sometimes when you do something in the design view, code gets added in here. Okay, so we're just going to close that, go back to our form1.cs, and you can see this code was added, and this is the method. Okay, this is the method that actually going to hold the command that are going to be executed. Okay, the commands that will be executed when that button is clicked. Okay, so for now, remember this form, we actually called it form1. Okay, in the name, how do we know it's called form1? If you click on it, go to your properties window. To go to the properties, you click on this. Remember, we are in events, so you click on this to go to properties. If you scroll up and look for name, here it is, name. Notice that it is called form1, and notice the form1, it is named form1 with a capital FORM and 1. Okay, so that's the name assigned to the form. Okay, so if I'm going to use if I want to use this form, I'll have to call it form1 with a capital F. So let's by the way, why is it called form1 with a capital F? I really don't like that. It should have actually been called form1 with a small f. I think that would make a lot more sense to differentiate it from the name of this class. Okay, so I'm pretty surprised Visual Studio did this, but no problem, we'll just go ahead and use it. So let's go back to our form1.cs, where we usually write our code. Inside the private void button1 click event handler, for now, don't worry too much about these things. They are actually what we call they are arguments, by the way, for the event handler. Okay, this is actually an event handler. Even though it's a method, it's an event handler. The reason we call them event handlers is because they are methods that actually get called when an event occurs. For this particular event, this method gets called when that button is clicked. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to say form1. Remember, that's the name of the form1 dot okay, this is odd, because now it's treating form1 as if it is a class. Now that is why I said it should have called it form1 with a small f. So what I'm going to do to rectify that, I'm going to go back to the design view, select this form, go to scroll to name, and I'm going to change this from notice it's having a capital F. I'm going to change it to small f. Okay, now the reason I'm using a small f, remember, is because we already have a capital F form1 with a capital F, which signifies, which is used as the name of the class for these form objects. Okay, so I'm using this with a small f to signify the identifier or the variable. Okay, or the name of that form. So if I want to access that form as an object in my code, I'm going to use form with a small f. I hope this is making sense. So I'm going to go back to my form 1, and then I'm going to use, okay, this is odd. I can see that the name of my class is now changing to form 1 with a small f. That's not what I want. Okay, let's go back to design view. I think that's not the property for changing the identifier. So I'm just going to change that to capital F. I'm pretty sure the name should be somewhere here. It's not here. Let's see if we can find it. It's supposed to be the identifier for the form. So we have text here. We have okay, I can't find the identifier for the form. I think it's called form 1 with a small f, but let's okay, let's go to the designer.cs, form1.designer.cs. I'm pretty sure we'd see the name of the form there. This dot name is equal to form 1 with a capital F. Okay, I believe this is where the problem comes in. I'm not sure why Visual Studio is writing it with a capital F. It should probably be named with a small f, but okay, let's skip that. Let me try something. If I go to where we actually created, that's in my program.cs, application.run new form 1. It didn't really give it a name. Okay, I see the problem. Okay, so this is pretty okay. This is something I haven't come across before. I think it was probably changed in the new versions of Visual Studio. I haven't encountered this problem before. Now it is a problem because the name of the form, they're giving the form the same name as the name of the class. Okay, I really don't like that. The name of the form should be distinct from the name of the class, because sometimes you want to access the form. Anyway, what we're going to do is let's ignore that. In our form1.cs, what we'll do, since if we want to access the form, since we're already in the form class, what we can do is we can use the this keyword. Okay, so if you use this keyword within an object or within a class, this kind of gives you the particular object in which you are working on. I don't know if this is making any sense, but just know that if you want to access the particular form which we are working on, you use this keyword. Okay, so we're going to use this to access the form itself. So this dot, what we want is the text of the form. That's the text property of the form. Okay, so we're going to say this dot text is equal to this you clicked my button. Okay, so we have changed the text. Remember the text property. The text property of the form is actually, let me just go to the design view, is actually this. Okay, remember at the beginning we set it to my basic Windows app, so that's what we'll be showing. But we have now written some code inside this event handler, okay, for the button click, that whenever that button is clicked, it should execute this code. And what this code is doing is saying that this dot text, it should set this dot text to this you clicked my button. Okay, now remember I said this this keyword refers to the form 1. Okay, we want to access form 1. Now to access it, since we are within the form1 class, we can just use this, okay, this keyword. So it's just like we're saying form1.text here, okay. Not form1 with a capital F, by the way, because form1 is a class. That's the problem I was trying to explain to you. It's funny that Visual Studio went on and named this form as form1 with a capital F, okay, which is the same name as a class. That is why we can't actually use the form1 with a small f, okay. We would have used in here, we would have used something like this, form1 with a small f dot text. Notice, but because form1 with a small f does not exist, we cannot do that. And if we use form1.text, form1 with a capital F, you notice we get an error because form1 is actually a class. Okay, it tries to access form1 as the class, and what we want is not the class. What we want is the name or the identifier for the particular form. Okay, that's why I just decided to use this keyword. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So this text is equal to you click my button, so it's going to change this text to whatever I set it to be. So let's just go ahead and run this program and see what happens. So I've clicked on play. So you can see we can maximize this, we can minimize, we can set it back, we can enlarge the window, we can minimize it. Now notice the special thing. Look at this, what it's saying, my basic Windows app. The moment I click on this button, notice what's going to happen. I'm going to click it now. Notice the moment I clicked it, notice it has changed to you clicked my button. Okay, so that's an example of an event. The moment you something happens, that particular code gets run. Okay, that it gets executed. Okay, I'm just going to terminate that. So the moment we click that button, this particular method gets called and this gets executed, and that is why the name on the form gets changed. Okay, I think this episode was actually harder than I thought to explain. I don't know if you were able to wrap your head around everything I've tried to explain in here, but the major thing I tried to explain is to show you properties, that every object you add, that even this form is an object, it has properties, it has events. This object, which was an object of a button dragged from a button control and dropped in here, is actually an object on our form. It has properties here and it has events. So every object has properties and events, and you can go ahead before you start running the program. You can make changes to those properties. Okay. Also, in your code, you can set an event. So, for example, an event for this button is if the button gets clicked, something should happen. Okay, that is an event. You can set an event by selecting the button first, go to the properties window, select the events tab, go to the click event and double click on the right hand side. When you double click, Visual Studio automatically created an event, or automatically creates an event and allows you to write the code that gets executed when that event gets fired. Okay, and we went ahead to write this code. So what I'm saying is that this code here can be anything. Okay, you can actually ask it to do anything. You can actually ask the Windows form to change the color from this orange to the default color when this button gets clicked. Okay, maybe we should try and do that before we terminate this program. So let's try and do that. So to do that, if you go to form1.cs, instead of this, what you're going to do, you're going to say this dot. Can you remember the name of the property? The name of the property was I think color. background color or something. Oh yes, back color. Okay, so we're going to say this dot back color is equal to system dot color. No, not console color, not. Okay, let's just use color. You can actually use color dot white. Okay, color dot white. So we're going to use color dot white. By the way, this color is a class already written in .NET, bundled in .NET. It comes, I think it's in the namespace system. Okay, so because we wrote using system here, that's why we are able to just use color like that. Okay, so color dot white. So what it's saying is that if we click on that button, it should set the back color to color white. Okay, so let's run that program and see. If we run that program and when we click on it, notice it changes to color white. Okay, notice you can change it again. Instead of color dot white, you can say color dot black. So I'm just showing you that it doesn't matter what code you write in here. It can be whatever you want it to be. Okay, it can be, in fact, you can tell the form to minimize or to reduce the size, just like that's the job of this this minimize button. Okay, by the way, let's just run this and see what happens now. So if I click on it, you can see it changes to color black. Okay, so that's just an example of an event in Visual Studio. Notice that if we click on it now, it doesn't change because it's saying it should change it to color.black, but it's already black. So it does change it to black, but we don't really see any difference because it's already black. If it changes to black, there's no difference. Okay. All right. I'm just going to end this tutorial here for this for today's episode, and I hope at least you've seen some tricks or some things you can do in Visual Studio with your Windows Forms application. Okay, I'm going to stop the tutorial now, and I'll see you in the next lesson.